going live. And we are live. So if we were going live, does that make me, what's it called? Philip Schofield.
Gordon the Gopher.
Yeah. No, Gordon the Gopher.
Sorry, I can't understand you just making a squeaking noise.
Who does Philip Schofield do it with? Holly Willoughby.
I think that's this morning, isn't it? He used to do it with Sarah Green.
Yes, okay.
Yes, it was. It was, wasn't it? Oh my god!
I think he did it.
Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah, because Andy Peters did something else, Live and Kicking.
Live and Kicking, yeah,
with someone else, but it was Sarah Green and Philip Schofield.
That was ITV though, wasn't it?
No, BBC.
Was it?
Yeah.
I was too old for it.
It's the same as all after Saturday Superstore.
Saturday Superstore.
Before that, Swap Shop.
Well, I saw Swap Shop. Saturday Superstore was when I stopped watching kids' TV on Saturday mornings, so I didn't see anything else. Hello, everybody. We're about to press record on our review, but we've just turned this on a couple of minutes early, basically so that we can do this and let the world know that we're live.
Should we frame ourselves
So
better?
this is going to be... Oh, nicely done. So let's reshare the bits and pieces just in case anybody actually does want to watch us, which is, I don't know how likely that is. People, do you want to watch us? Right, I shared that one. Twitter, let's try and share that one. I'm JR. I seem to have a bit of a croaky cough.
Are we supposed to introduce ourselves?
Oh, I'm Matt.
And I'm Simon.
And we'll probably do that all over again in a minute when I press record here. But not just quite yet. Oops. Right, this is playing me up. Right, that's better. Right, now we can probably get started. We don't have to wait for Simon because, let's face it, who cares? Is that what I actually said?
Yeah, you said it out loud.
Lee's on a table, so...
No, Lee is... where did we used to keep Stephen Moffat? In a cupboard in the corner of the room or something?
Lee will probably now see all of our Facebook Live notifications.
And he'll probably come dashing here and be too late. Do you think he actually will? No, because he doesn't take any notice of anything we say on social media, including when we send him specific messages on social media to let him know where we are and what we're doing.
It's quite sensible.
Okay, shall we do a review of Doctor Who? Let's do a review of Doctor Who. We are strangers in space, and for the next 60 minutes, we're going to be talking about Spyfall Part 1, so you don't have to.
Did you do a pointy thing?
He's a stress at you.
Well, for anybody who's just listening and not watching, we are live on YouTube.
JR's gone mad with power, showmanship.
Well,
He's going to wear a top hat in a second, a sparkly sequin gown.
If you're on telly, you might do a little bit of showmanship there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wearing a shirt.
And you are?
I'm Matt.
I'm Simon.
And I'm JR. And we are going to talk about Spyfall Part 1. Have any of us watched it more than once?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Technically,
that's one of our
I didn't watch the whole episode. I
questions.
skipped through it to refresh my brain.
Okay. I wish I had, because I watched it on Sunday night in the back room on a crappy little computer screen and just tried to take it in as well as I could, and I had a chance to go back to it. Okay, let's go around the table, and in a nutshell, what were our expectations and did it live up to them? Simon?
Do you know what? I didn't have many expectations at all, really. I didn't quite know what it was going to do.
Well, we've talked a few times about what we thought Series 12 might be a bit.
Yeah, I know we thought that it might be steered towards a more, what's the word?
Standard
Doctor Who, yeah. But you just don't know, do you? So...
of course, it's
well, we do now, but yeah,
and it kind of was.
But I think,
I don't think it's a course correction. I think it's a deliberate plan.
Well, Yeah, that makes more sense than kind of what was going on in my head, which is that you can kind of get into that mindset where you hear so much people saying, "Oh, do you know what? He's gonna do a course correction because he's listening to the fans." This business of listening to the fans.
How, in what way is they listening to the fans?
I know,
especially as most of this was, if not written, the scripts were at least being worked on, and at least the stories had been divvied out between the writers, and the writers had already been given, their conceits for the episode and an overall arc for the series before any of the last series was even broadcast.
Yeah, so you sort of read people saying, "Oh, at least they're listening to the fans now." Well, I think
this was always Christian.
I think that's an echo chamber in itself. Isn't it? It is this idea that there's some kind of connection. But yeah, like you say, they're planning so far ahead.
But how did you feel it went?
I think it went very well. It went very well. I think it was a really solid episode.
How about you, man?
I didn't have massive expectations. I think it was a course correction, not in the story, but in the way it was shot and the way the TARDIS looks. I think they changed the interior of the TARDIS. And I think in those sense, it was them reviewing the series and making an adjustment.
No, the reason the TARDIS was different was apparently because they didn't actually get to finish it before they started filming Series 11.
Okay.
So that was an incomplete TARDIS.
So definitely a course correction.
Well, that's not a course correction, that's just finishing something off.
Okay. I thought
that's what I read, anyway.
I thought it was okay. I quite enjoyed it. I need to see more of the series. I certainly need to see the second part to judge some of the performances. And it's also slightly eclipsed by a hell of a lot of really good television that got released, particularly from the BBC, around the same time.
Well, I've not seen most of that, so I can't comment.
So a lot of that, if it had all been in 2019, would be in my top 20 of the year television. And Doctor Who, if it had been in 2019, would be just outside the top 20, I think. But that's still stronger than last year. I'm feeling more optimistic than last year.
I wonder. Well, I think we're talking a bit about what we might expect from the second episode. And most of the people listening to this will probably, unless they are actually here live right now, or listening immediately as the podcast goes out, will probably have seen the second episode before they hear us talking about it. So we'll try and guess maybe what happens. I think there was a lot of stuff going on in that episode that kind of suggested to me things that I kind of half expected Chris Chibnall to be doing in the first series. And in the first series, when you realised how much he was stripping it back in order to do that thing that he talked about, then you realised he wasn't going to be doing those things. And I did wonder, will he do those things? And I don't know, I think it looks like he is. The power of three, I thought, would be a big influence on the way his Doctor Who works, the conceptual nature of it. And there wasn't really a lot last year that had much of a conceptual nature. Maybe, I said this when we talked about it, I think. I thought there was a sort of low-key conceptual nature to it, in that there were a lot of low-key concepts underpinning the episodes. Like this is the one set in an NHS facility, or something that represents an NHS facility. But these kind of concepts didn't really affect much of how the stories developed. I think there's a lot more of that in this. And I enjoyed it. I can't say I was blown away by it in the way that half the internet seems to have been. But I thought it was a lot of fun. And I thought it was a lot closer to the sort of tone and pace of last year than the reaction to it seemed to indicate that other people thought. Because it was still quite slow and languorous.
It's certainly not so character-driven, is it? That first series has established the characters. It feels like it's bedded.
And this one was just having fun with the characters.
It still doesn't feel so. One thing about the beginning of last year, it did feel new and it felt different. This doesn't feel different because it resembles last year's.
Yeah.
But it also brings in more Russell T Davies style twistiness. less.
Yeah, I got Moffat.
I think there's a lot of Moffat in
but
here
that
because
that kind of makes it feel slightly less new to me. So in part of my brain, I'm feeling like it's a kind of a retrograde step, but it's still quite fun.
but it was a retrograde step that was always going to happen, right?
Well, be that as it may, it still feels like a step back when I'm kind of interested in things. And this is what I'm saying about the other television that I've watched. It's been really progressive and at times iconoclastic and different.
But
so this is more like
you're essentially saying it's unremarkable.
But what
not in a purely negative sense, but in that
and I
we're
want
not seeing anything we've not
I
seen
still
before.
want something remarkable from a kind of a keystone television series.
But then the other thing you're saying is, I'm assuming some of the other television you're talking about is things like, I don't know, Wurzel Gummidge.
Yeah, Dracula, Christmas Carol.
Well, Dracula is again this year, isn't it?
Yes,
And a Christmas Carol. But they're all new things or new versions of old things.
Yeah,
whereas this is a program that's been going on for 15 years. This
is a new version of an old thing,
well,
like Dracula. Like
no, it's a
Wurzel
continuing version of a thing.
Well, is it? I mean, it kind of gets. This is what we were saying last year. It gets rebooted every time, periodically, like Dracula. It's Dracula isn't an ongoing story, or unless, actually looking at this year's Dracula, it might end up being an ongoing story, but it's still got that same sense of being rebooted.
But Doctor Who is not a complete and utter reboot from new writers devising their own format.
No.
Chris Chibnall has to work within a format and a style to a certain extent that's been laid down by his two predecessors.
So,
whereas Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss had free reign to do absolutely anything they wanted.
So the format, I'm not expecting to be sparkly new and different. I'm talking about the tone, the kind of the structure, and the kind of the elements that are brought in. But we've said that it felt like it did feel like this episode was drawing in more things from the sort of ideas from the Russell T Davies era. It felt more traditional.
And Stephen Moffat, I think there's definitely got, because one of the things that Stephen Moffat always does is he answers the question before you realise he's even asked it. And I think Chris Chibnall's doing that in this story, although whether that actually is what it is totally remains to be seen with the second episode, but he was definitely doing that with the Master. The clues, there were masses of them, such that at one point I thought they were going to overbalance the episode. I was starting to think, actually, is there any story here apart from there being clues as to the Master's identity? I guess it remains to be seen. But in answer to that point, if Doctor Who's a successful formula and a successful format, then you don't want to stray too far away from it.
No, not the format. But I'll give an example. So Deep Breath, for me, Deep Breath was effectively a stylistic reboot. And it wasn't a format reboot, but it looked different. It felt fresh. It had a very different cast bar the one. It brought in previous characters, but it still felt like a new program in the same format.
Did you think?
Yeah. I compared Deep Breath with what had gone before it.
I thought it was pretty much the same.
Really?
Yeah.
You didn't think it was? There was more darkness about it. There was more creepiness. They brought in a completely different director. It had a sort of really distinctive visual sense.
No, I think if you play Deep Breath and say Matt Smith's first Christmas special back to back, they're pretty much exactly the same.
Okay. You're seeing something I'm not.
Okay. The Christmas Carol and Deep Breath.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That different?
As I say, the format's the same, but I think there's a distinctiveness to it that's not drawing on previous aspects of the series. I think Deep Breath has a character that isn't drawing on previous Moffat episodes or Russell T Davies episodes. This is my point, that I think there's room for. I can't see the Chibnallness of these episodes yet. Like I could last season a bit.
Actually, to be fair, I think this episode is probably closer to what I expected of him.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. This is more like Dinosaurs on a Spaceship or The Power of Three or something like that.
But what I expected from Chibnall is a kind of an amalgamation of other writers, because he fits in really well with other showrunners and other series. He kind of slots in. But that is
what we had here, though. Don't you think?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, that this could be from other eras. I'm looking for a Chibnallness, not Chibnall run through the lens of Stephen Moffat or run through the lens of Russell T Davies. And I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I kind of enjoyed it. I was sort of, what did I like about it? I like the pace. I like Lenny Henry. I quite like the twist.
We all knew that was coming, though, right?
Well, you sort of told us.
Yeah, but then we may have discounted
you
that.
Speculated.
But also, I think one of the big mistakes... Well, no, apparently not, because apparently it still took most of the internet by surprise. But as soon as Sacha Dhawan turns up and has not been mentioned once in the pre-publicity, I'm like, oh, so he is playing the Master then? He has to be, otherwise he'd have been mentioned in the pre-publicity.
I hadn't heard anything about the Master being in the series apart from you bringing it from Gallifrey Base, presumably, or home.
No, it's been mentioned all over the place.
Okay.
You
are the only person that brought me that information.
Well, apparently so, but
which made me feel a little bit grumpy at the time that you brought me that information and it turned out to be true. But
we weren't expecting it that soon. And hey, I
actually didn't guess that he was the Master. Actually, I didn't guess that he was the Master until the reveal. I guessed that there was something odd about him. I guessed there was something creepy about him. I guessed that he wasn't all he cracked up to be, or there was something odd about him. But I didn't. I guess I wasn't looking for twists at that point.
Yeah, fair enough. Everything he was saying was like, oh, he's setting you up. Oh, he's saying this to set you up. Oh, he's doing that to set you up. The way he flirts with Yaz, the way he talks to Graham about, haven't you noticed this about the Doctor? Didn't you notice that about the Doctor? The way he talks about the one time they've met and makes a big thing of the one time they've met. And all this the whole thing was like, he's setting them up.
But if you weren't expecting it.
If you weren't expecting it, it was done with a lightness of touch.
It was
really nice.
Incredible lightness, to the point where I thought about what you told me and thought,
discounting.
Is this right? Is this right? Is this right? And then he was actually the ridiculous comment when he looked in the TARDIS. I thought, right, okay, now this is.
I just thought I would have probably thought the same thing if they'd have mentioned him in the pre-publicity. But because they didn't mention him in the pre-publicity, I just thought, well, they've kept that secret for a reason.
And they photoshopped him out of the trailers as well, which was even more extreme.
In some cases and in others not, because he was already partly obscured. So he's only been taken out if you could see his face.
Yes. Yeah.
What I mean is,
he wasn't taken out of the bits where you couldn't see him.
But no, there are photos when you can see there are 5 people.
Okay, right.
But unless you realise that you're looking for a 5th person, you wouldn't.
But the actual moving footage he was taking out of.
Yeah.
Because you've seen.
They shot it twice.
I saw that. I saw him
knowing that they'd use it
him talking about the Doctor's past, a bit like what's his name from Rose, whose name I forget.
Clive.
Yeah, Clive from Rose. So that's a version of that. And the ridiculous thing going into TARDIS, I just thought was another version of that. You can't have every character saying, "Oh my God, it's bigger on the inside." So ridiculous. I thought, well, that's a good reaction to that.
Yeah.
But I think when I did the typical Doctor Who fan when she started saying, "Oh, I know one person that we can talk to. Let's go and talk to this one person." My Doctor Who fan brain automatically cycled through, everybody from the past in Doctor Who that it could be. But I need to learn that every time they say that actually they're talking about a completely new character or a completely new monster. It's not going to be Susan or Durrani.
Well, I was expecting Felix Leiter.
Well, it could have been the guy from Impossible Astronaut.
Well, yeah, that is
period. But
wrong period.
Harry Sullivan recast. Harry Sullivan recast. I'd have been up.
There's a guy that used to
I would have
be
taken
in.
a bit of explanation.
You wouldn't be the only one upset.
There's a guy that used to be in Hollyoaks about 5 or 6 years ago, who was the absolute spitting image of Ian Marter at that
There we
age,
go. Yeah.
with the voice and everything.
Yeah.
He would have been perfect.
Or do a sort of Star Wars CGI recreation of Ian Martin.
I don't know if Doctor Who's budget's up to that yet.
We have a comment.
We have a few comments, actually.
Okay.
Good evening to Mark Cochran, for a start.
Good evening, Mark Cochran. So, Comedy Fish.
And good evening to Exoscale 10.
There we go. And Comedy Fish says, if I think RTD, I think character. Moffat, I think clever plots. Chibnall, not sure yet.
I think we get quite a bit of both in this episode. I think the master, whatever, is very well sketched in. I think the companions, all of them, got a lot of nice stuff to do, and felt, I hesitate to say felt more fleshed out than they did in the first series. But I think one of the complaints in the first series was that the fleshing out wasn't obvious, that they were just being allowed to get on with being the characters. Because a lot of people seem to like it when you very ostentatiously do the characters on screen. So it seemed that there was more of that this time. So I thought the character stuff was excellent in this episode.
I think when I was watching it, I thought the Lenny Henry character wasn't very big, wasn't very fleshed out, but
there's a kind of reason for that.
Because it turned out that he's not the big baddie. And in fact, he might not be the baddie after all, because there's a repeated line about some confusion about whether he was a secret agent, double agent, or a triple agent, which presumably, makes him incredibly ambiguous.
Do you want to get into my theory about what's going to happen?
Okay.
How the story's going to pan out?
Okay.
Do you want to or not? You're looking sceptically at me.
I don't mind.
Well, they're on... Right,
is this a theory, or is this something you've had confirmed on Gallifrey Base?
No, nobody's talked about this.
This is definitely a theory that's coming out of your head.
This is coming out of my head and nowhere else. Okay. And I've listened to a couple of reviews and read a few things, and nobody's mentioned any of this.
Okay.
Well, the place where they're landing, first Yaz and then the Doctor, that's like somebody's head, right? That's between hair on somebody's head.
Okay.
Or something similar.
Okay.
And we've had the reference to the tissue compression eliminator, right, with the master. And I don't think Chris Chibnall's thrown that in just as a nod back, but I think that's something to do with the plot. And we've had these aliens that are named in the end credits, by the way. Casa Ven or something like that.
Have you done an anagram thing, just in case?
That's
no,
in Spain, isn't it?
But I realised that if it was last year
in there somewhere.
Well, I realised that when one of them introduces themselves, then Jodie Whittaker's Doctor is going to say, Casey Van, your name's Casey Van, and spend the rest of the episode taking the mick out of them.
Okay.
But that's not. I think the alternative universe that they are from, that they are invading from, is not a parallel universe, but is in fact the microbiotic universe. I think they're microbes.
Oh, okay.
I think that they are... Because, and I don't know how deeply Chris Chibnall would go into this stuff, and let's face it, Doctor Who's relationship with science has always been a bit dicey. But you know that when a transference or an experiment or some kind of exchange takes place, two things that are equal and continue to be equal, but would either involve disbursement or some kind of change to their attributes are mass and energy.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of mass or energy. You can only change their form or whatever. So if these creatures are invading from the microbiotic universe, then they'll have to take on the mass of something else, or vice versa. I think what's happening is the characters are getting replaced with the microbiotic aliens, and that's how they're taking over our universe one person at a time.
Exchange with Yaz.
And I think the exchange with Yaz is one. So I think the Yaz that we've got now is actually the microbiotic doppelganger, and actually Yaz Yobig is still existing in the hairs on Sacha Dhawan's head or whatever, wherever. I think the Doctor now is in the microbiotic universe, and there'll be a replacement Doctor along or whatever.
Okay.
I think maybe the actor's name who's playing the bad, who's not the big bad, Lenny Henry. I think he's already been replaced by one of the microbiotic creatures. Maybe, I don't know. I looked at that and I saw what happened with Yaz, and I thought they're doing a replacement thing.
That whole replacement thing was going on in my head because I was thinking that how they manifest, they take on the properties of whatever surface they come through. So it's like you say.
So there's white lights. They are the
transference thing going on.
So the reason why they're appearing as white lights until the transference has taken place is because at that point they are tiny and you're just seeing their energy rather than the actual creatures
Does that
themselves.
explain the one that's trying to get into the TARDIS? The one that's breaking into the TARDIS?
Sorry?
The one that's breaking into the TARDIS through the TARDIS door. Does that explain that one?
Oh, could, because if you're microbiotic, and what you're seeing is just like a representation of your energy, things like doors and walls and stuff wouldn't necessarily be a barrier to you. If there's just the tiniest... I mean, if you're, atom-sized, basically you can crawl anywhere where there's a gap between atoms, right?
Microbiotic? Isn't that
I don't know.
Your gut?
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know the correct terminology. Microscopic.
Yeah, yogurt.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about microbiology, aren't we?
Okay.
So, whatever the correct expression for microbiology is. But you know what I'm saying? I think I got the impression that's where this story was going. And actually, I thought at the end of it, if that is where this story is going, then I like the setup because he's already answered a lot of the questions that you would have about all of these things in the first episode, but he's done it in a sufficiently Moffat-y way that most of those answers have gone right past without you even noticing what they are. And if it does turn out to be, which it probably won't turn out to be that, but if it does, apologies to anybody I've spoiled it for.
I didn't think hairs, but
You didn't?
But it looks like it, I suppose. I thought sort of forest, but that's kind of what you're supposed to think.
Yes.
So it makes sense that it's...
I think there's been a switch,
Yeah.
I think they're on somebody's head. I think these creatures probably... Doesn't one of the characters at some point...
I don't think it's a master's head, because otherwise you'd see lots of little lights floating around this, shining between his scalp. Well,
isn't there a point... I seem to recall in the episode that there is a point at which one of the characters has like a little dance of lightning around the hand or something. Maybe it's the Lenny Henry one. See, I'm trying to remember, because like I say, it's now, 4 days since I've watched it. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but I think one of the characters at some point, there's a little bit of lightning or something. I could be wrong. But you know what I'm saying? It wouldn't have to be Sacha Dhawan's head. It could be Lenny Henry's.
That's slightly annoying, because it was a story idea I had, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm a massive
everything's a story idea.
Slight story idea that I had as well, which I was going to get in there before you.
Mind you, all I was doing was ripping off the Micronauts, which is...
I had a great story idea about toy soldiers that come alive.
Really?
Yeah.
You could call it
small soldiers.
Or toy soldiers. It was going to have the Duke of Wellington in it.
Still could.
It was good. I planned it and everything.
Right, now I was about to say something then. Now
there was a big a minor Twitter storm about
there were 2 or 3.
They're repairing the TARDIS through the bottom of the TARDIS. Somebody on Twitter claimed that proved that she was an imposter. Because this had never been done before in the history of Doctor Who.
And presumably lots of people then pointed out when it
has been done in the history of Doctor Who.
many times.
And I can't remember exactly, but I've seen wires being trailed into the police box through the doors, admittedly, but there's no difference from going in through...
No, somebody pointed out the handles on the bottom at the start of the 50th.
Yeah.
You know, it's dimensionally transcendental. I imagine it's all...
Yeah.
The architecture will be changed as and when it needs to be. And
if you really want it, she's not necessarily repairing something on the console through the bottom. She's repairing something potentially on the outer shell that's gone wrong. So that's a possibility, but I don't think you need
just
to.
About
I think the fact that you start your series with a slight
Good evening, Peter Cabana.
Hey,
The fact that
Peter.
you start your series with a short scene of the Doctor repairing something to do with the TARDIS surely just marks that Doctor down as exactly the same as every other Doctor.
It's the
We've
death
ever
of
had.
it's the death of Doctor Who. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
There were Twitter storms in various places
Let's get
about.
into them.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
They're so minor.
Yeah, because I don't have the guts to do it on Twitter because it turns into a dog pile. So doing it on a podcast is a one-way thing, so I can say anything.
Well, I don't want to comment on this necessarily, but apparently having a white woman saying the word fam to a black boy is problematic because she is co-opting his language to use against him in a way that causes him to...
Okay, that would be an issue, but I don't know if fam is fam a black term.
Well, I did some research on this.
Probably not the right people to...
I did some research on this, and most of the places you look, it just says it's a shortened version of family that's used as street slang. If you really, really dig, it's used as black street slang. So presumably it came from black culture initially, but I had to really dig to find that.
I mean, I'm in a slight precarious position, as probably we all are, in that we've been co-opting slang terms from the
all
New
over
York
the
streets
world
throughout our entire childhood. I mean, there's nothing that I've said in slang terms that probably hasn't come from
New York or Jamaica.
Yeah.
These things coming out of language is whether you consciously do it, isn't it?
Well, the huge thing about street slang now is it comes from Jamaica by way of South Central LA. You hear it in all these radio DJs, like I can't even remember their names, but there are so many radio DJs now on like Radio 1 and what have you that have Jamaican accents that have never been outside South London in their life.
Tim
Westwood. Yeah,
who's the son of a bishop. He went to public school.
And yeah, he has a Jamaican accent.
Mysteriously drops his H's in the
So co-opting black culture is something that's been going on for so long. Well, it should be maybe an issue that it has been going on for so long, but I don't know why you'd necessarily pull that one out.
I think I had more of an issue if it was derogatory or if it was an expression of a power imbalance or something like that. But this is kind of quite clearly innocent.
Well, then it's completely the other way round, actually. It's not just innocent and neutral, it's, what's the word I want? Not friendly, but...
familial.
It's familiar between the characters.
And it's also going back to Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, where he starts having a... Does he say he's got a team? Is that what he says?
It's just a new version of that.
Yeah.
Another one that people were complaining about, that some people were absolutely up in arms about, is the bit where Stephen Fry's character says to Graham, "Oh, you must be the Doctor," and when she says, "No, it's me," he says, "Oh, I was told to look out for a man," and she says, "Well, I used to be a man, but I've had," and this is the word that upset everybody, "an upgrade." Yeah. And apparently that was revenge. Somebody called it revenge.
Cheeky at best.
Now that women are more than equal to men, that was revenge. That was women putting men in their place.
It's also a Stephen Moffat joke, isn't it? From Hell Bent.
Well, it is, but it's a joke that essentially goes back through all the Doctors, right back to Dandy and a Clown and so on and so forth. Yeah. The Doctors have always been dismissive of their predecessors, pretty much, and it's essentially just a new version of that. And the writer obviously knows this is the first woman Doctor, so that's part of the joke, but it is such an innocuous joke. How anybody could take offence, you'd have to be looking to take offence, wouldn't you? And if you're looking to take offence, then you're watching with prejudice already built in inherently into the way you watch the programme. Is ridiculous.
I was mad.
There's got to be more to talk about, though.
But there was a fair few comments as well about an imbalance of the amount of white faces, but let's not go any further into that.
Talking about imbalances, outside of the main cast, outside of Yaz and the Doctor, the three main guest stars, the only three principal guest characters in the entire thing. There are a few other minor parts, but they're basically just Well, what do the three main guest stars have in common? There's Sacha Dhawan.
Yeah.
There's Stephen Fry.
Right.
There's Lenny Henry.
Yeah.
They've all got dicks.
Oh yeah.
This is a very, very male-centric episode.
Mm.
And I now you see, I think... Well,
Matt's face.
is it because I mentioned
can't
the
see
word
Matt's
dicks?
face in the podcast line.
It's more thoughtful. So Stephen Fry, I wasn't sure about.
He's
very,
not the
very
best
much
actor.
played, very much played
Yeah.
Stephen Fry.
He was Stephen
I
Fry
like-
being Stephen Fry, and
I like the bit where he slaps. Is it he slaps Graham's hand or something?
Yeah, that
Waves
was
or
great.
something.
Yeah.
That's good.
but he plays it straight. I know Stephen Fry is Stephen Fry, but he plays it straight, and it was.
I think it was fine. I was quite glad when he was killed, so that he didn't have a whole episode
No.
of doing that.
Mm.
That having done that in that sort of package of time,
Yeah.
made him quite funny and acceptable. Lenny
Before you
Henry,
move on-
I really liked.
Okay, before you move on,
Yes.
do we think he was killed? Everything you think you know is a lie. So, yeah. I'm wondering again as well if it's a storyline about replacements, a sort of doppelganger invasion of the body snatchers type storyline. I'm wondering again whether that's another thing that we
Maybe.
may get undone in the next
But
episode.
in the context of that episode, he didn't come back.
No.
So that was my point.
But I think some of those lines in Stephen Fry's coming out of Stephen Fry's mouth were just. It was just poetry. Just his delivery was just so good.
It was
so
fun.
I mean, he
Yeah,
was playing a pompous person, which
Yeah.
is
He was doing what he does, but
acting
it
appropriately
was just
for
great.
that.
It was just great, and if I'm honest, I didn't think Lenny Henry was anywhere near that level.
Really, I thought he
No.
was really kind of pitching it at a subtle level. I thought when he
That was a personal
could have gone big, and it becomes clear why he didn't go big at the end. I found him quite believable as who he said he was, which, considering he was playing an improbable, like, Silicon Valley multi-millionaire, that's quite a feat. I think it was quite a tall order.
It just sort of felt like kind of standard guest star stuff.
So I'm going to come in
But
here
I think for Lenny Henry, that's quite a big thing, because Lenny Henry's a big personality.
Yes,
So to actually sort of slot in
that's
to
a
the
very
drama
good. That is a very good point.
and not be big or
he was
do an Alan Cumming. And I haven't
but he
seen a lot
did.
of his acting, and I know he's done a lot of sort of Shakespeare and on
Yeah.
stage, and I haven't seen a lot. So for me, that's still quite a surprise.
No, you're absolutely right. Because
Did
at
you
no
not
point
see
did I.
the third series of Broadchurch?
No.
Because he did.
It was good
played
in that,
like
really
this in that. It was
Okay.
very like this in that,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, no, I'd say it's a valid point that I didn't at any point think, oh, it's Lenny Henry comedian trying to be an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think if you'd seen the
didn't
third
think
series
that.
of Broadchurch, it wouldn't have been such a surprise.
Right.
Because it essentially just carries on from there. And then, so Stephen Fry fan, Lenny Henry fan, Sacha Dhawan fan. I thought he was the
he
best thing in
was
it.
off the scale.
He was
Brilliant.
excellent. Is he wearing prosthetic teeth? Because throughout the entire thing, he's sucking and licking at his teeth. I'm thinking, I'm not sure I've seen him do. I've seen him in a few things. I don't think I've ever seen him do that before.
No, I've never seen him sucking and licking.
At his own teeth.
No.
But he was having so much fun doing it. I was thinking, this is definitely a deliberate choice.
I have to say, those few seconds when he realises he's been caught out are some of my favourite seconds in the whole of Doctor Who. Because there's a moment where his eyes kind of go,
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't sure. But then I wasn't sure with John Sims' first scene in Utopia.
yeah,
And so, in brief packages, I find those sort of master performances to be slightly overbearing. But when I see them in a whole episode and then another episode, so when I see him a bit more, I'm pretty sure it's going to bed down for me. But seeing that in that kind of one manic moment, it kind of threw me slightly.
I was
see
seeing that, funny enough, we reviewed Gremlins 2 the other week. Is that gremlin with the eyes that rotate and roll around? I was seeing that. I just thought it was great.
I thought this was like the flip side of Utopia. Where, because because in Utopia, when the Master gets revealed, the Master's right on top of it, right? And is straight into deadly mode. Whereas this is a Master who's accidentally been caught out and he's not really quite sure what to do next. But sod it. Let's just get on with it.
Yeah.
So I thought it was. I enjoyed that, and I hope his character settles down a bit in the second, because we had a few mad moments between then and the end of the episode. I thought that was fine and fair enough. But what I really wanted to see was Sacha Dhawan, because I think Sacha Dhawan is the actor who has played the character who most resembles Roger Delgado in terms of his manner and being.
You mean Boris Hussein?
Sorry?
So what character?
Roger Delgado, the Master.
Oh, you mean in this he's playing closer to Roger Delgado?
No, I think as a person, as an actor, he is the closest to Roger Delgado of all the actors who have subsequently played the Master.
Okay.
I think in terms of what kind of an actor he is, he's closer to Roger Delgado than any of the other ones who've played the Master. So in the second episode, I'd like to see him do a bit more suave and sophisticated.
Presumably he was expecting to be caught out on the plane.
Well, at some point...
He said a bomb. Like a comedy bomb.
Well, yeah. Well, at some point...
I think he's just enjoying going along with it. Yeah.
At some point, he's going to expect to have been caught out, but it was just that precise moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So who knows? And as it's the way of these things with Doctor Who, you know, something happens that the characters aren't supposed to know about, but that the writer has been pre-planning for months in writing the episode. Okay, we've got a question.
We've got a question, from Comedy Fish. I have a question for you, your brains. Why in a time travel show did they make a big deal about having to explain where the companions have been when with the Doctor?
Where the companions have been when with the Doctor,
e.g.
Yaz telling her boss, etc., and Ryan having to say about all the various illnesses he's had, and so on and so forth. Well, this varies from one showrunner to another, doesn't it?
It does. It's the whole Bill and Ted's.
It's
the clock in San Dimas is always running.
Can the Doctor get them back to the time and point when he said he would? And with Clara, the 12th Doctor just about keeps managing it so she can keep her job in the school.
With Rose.
The 9th Doctor very obviously didn't do it. So Chris Chibnall was writing a version of the Doctor where slightly scatterbrained, I suppose, because I think the 13th Doctor comes across as a bit of a scatterbrain and obviously doesn't get the TARDIS back so that they can...
I also think that works really well in the character development, because if you think about it...
Well, they are all characters at the end of Arachnid said they were going to give up what they were doing to go away and be with the Doctor, right?
Yeah, I think there's a subconscious thing as well, that if we're aware that time is travel is moving on for their families and them living at home, then it just gives you a deeper sense of character development and that they are growing.
It's part of that thing that Stephen Moffat says about if you have a two-parter, then a week has to have transpired between the two episodes for the characters as well as the audience. Otherwise, for the audience, it's going to feel weird following events that carry on immediately after if 167 hours and 15 minutes have elapsed in between. Same thing with the characters. Chris Chibnall has said, okay, we've had a year off in the screen from Doctor Who and these characters being on the screen. Let's show on the screen that those characters have had a year too, essentially. So yeah, it comes down to that.
So I've just watched Dracula, which is why I'm smiling at those comments.
Well, Stephen Moffat does something similar.
I'm not going to say.
I will watch it, and probably we'll do a TV Club podcast about it when I get a chance to. But the fact is, I work shifts. I go to bed at 8 o'clock. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I get home. There's a small child in the house. I haven't had a chance to watch Dracula yet. I will when I can. I think it's very awful for them to put 3 episodes on 3 nights, though. If they put it on once a week, I might have had a chance.
I also say within chapters in a book. I mean, I'm writing at the moment, and I definitely feel that there's got to be some kind of time movement between chapters. And that can be as big or as small as you like. Yeah. But you'll rarely find a chapter stopping, and I don't think then continuing straight away.
I suppose it depends what kind of a book it is, but yeah, I always like to feel like a chapter is an episode of an instalment.
Obviously, you're getting films. I can think of a number of films now where the sequel has started
in the same place.
In the same place. So John Wick does this, and the Incredibles did this.
Yes.
So it's kind of, maybe it's more
and it feels like a
films,
novelty,
even though
doesn't it?
there's like years between the films, they just sort of pick up.
Whereas you've got Rise of Skywalker straight away. My God, so much has happened between.
Yeah, but that felt odd with the Rise of Skywalker that there was a gap. So I think with Doctor Who, you're sort of almost attuned for it, the episodes overlapping, literally, because you see a recap, and that's something that Stephen Moffat stopped doing. But sometimes he then had the second episode starting halfway through the first episode, so there were sort of big overlaps and flashbacks and things like that.
Because Time of Angels, that goes straight on, doesn't it?
The
other side of the.
I think
it's changing location.
I think it's playing with that rather than having a conscious gap. It's playing with the idea that either there should or shouldn't be a gap, and making it undercutting your expectations. That's what makes it interesting. So next or on Sunday, I'm assuming my guess would be Chibnall would be a traditionalist, and he'll still have the characters on the plane. Yeah, and in the same situation they were at the end.
Moffat would have show them safe.
Yeah, a year later, or
I'm not so sure he will. Because even Russell T Davies at the start of The Sound of Drums, he has those characters arriving in London, and then explains in flashback how they got out of what's it called, Malcasiro, the planet at the end of the universe. I wouldn't be remotely surprised if Chris Chibnall started the next episode tomorrow night, as we're recording this, in Paris in 1943, with that scene of them arriving in a cold open, if we're going to continue to have cold opens, and then explain how they got there, how they got off the plane or whatever, and maybe then the second episode becomes a hunt around Paris for the Master or something, whatever. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying I necessarily predict that is what will happen. But I think Chris Chibnall is the kind of writer, you mentioned this earlier, who takes bits and pieces from here, there and everywhere. If he thinks that something's worked for somebody else, and he thinks it'll work in his own story.
So Moffat-y, though. We didn't see any indication of that in the first.
But that's what happened in Utopia and Sound of Drums. So it's not just Moffat-y.
Yeah, but
also...
But that would be... So Utopia and Sound of Drums... It's not quite as explicit as Moffat would do it. It's not quite like that.
No, but it is the story that this is most referencing, really, in what it's doing in the plot. So it wouldn't shock me, put it that way. There was something else, and then the conversation keeps going on, and I keep forgetting the things I was going to bring up. The fact that he's just used the word Spyfall as the name for both episodes rather than give them individual episode titles. Do we think that's possibly because they're both showing within a week? First time that's happened since Peter Davison, by the way. So if there's a similar two-parter at the end of the series, will it go back to two distinct episode titles if those two episodes are a week apart? Or do you think it'll be part 1 and part 2 as again?
We've had part 1 and part 2 before, haven't
Only with the End of Time.
Only in the only case?
Yeah, and that was Christmas Day and New Year's Day, so that was, I think they deliberately did that to make people feel like they had to watch both the holiday specials to get the story.
Same thing happening again, then pulling people back to...
I wonder if they've just done that at the start of the series here, and put the episodes just 4 days apart, 5 days apart, whatever it is, to say to the audience, you've got to come in and you've got to stick with it. Speaking of which, then, Sacha Dhawan, is this his story or is this his season? Is he going to be in the rest of the series, or is he going to be one shot and done after these 2 episodes and then we're going to move on to other things?
Obviously, I'd love him to stay with the whole series. I doubt it. So.
I don't think he's going to be in every episode.
Not every episode,
but I think he'll definitely come back, because
I hope so.
Well, they built him up in 1 episode, so we haven't really seen the Master this episode. We've seen the build up to him. We'll see, presumably, the Master in the next episode. But that's not... I don't think they'll waste that character on 1-shot episode when they can bring him back fairly cheaply. I mean, it's not like...
Well, if he's in for 2 episodes, then, give him a contract for half a series or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know what's just struck me? What if they start the next episode in Paris in 1943 and the Master's nowhere to be found, and we don't see him again until episode 9 or something? What if they go to Paris to solve the mystery, but he buggers off somewhere else in the meantime, and that's it? They don't see him again till the end of the series.
Okay.
That would be an interesting way to tell a story that essentially we've seen before, in a way that we haven't seen before, wouldn't it?
It would. I'm still sceptical that Chibnall's. I'm still suspicious and feel that Chibnall is conservative enough to want to tell his story in a linear way, and to do a sort of Barry Letts.
Have you watched any of Broadchurch?
Yeah, I watched the first series.
Okay, because
The first two series.
Broadchurch wasn't. The writer of Broadchurch wouldn't make me think that he's going to be that conservative in that sort of way.
Broadchurch was a pretty conservative whodunit with a linear narrative, a build-up of suspects, and then a revelation at the end.
It was a linear narrative.
There wasn't anything
but
spectacular
because it was a
about
whodunit, the narrative itself could be linear, but the way the writer and the audience have to think, and the characters therefore have to think, has to be non-linear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Broadchurch isn't, a competent whodunit that kept my attention, but it's not Dracula.
Well, okay, I've not seen Dracula yet, but the point of it is, if this writer has and can do a whodunit, then they can mess with the format of something else to make it more like the format of a whodunit.
I guess so, but a whodunit's a conservative genre. I mean, it is a fairly sort of old, standard, recognisable genre.
It is, as long as you're doing a whodunit, but if you use the format of a whodunit on a different genre, then maybe not necessarily. I mean, the point of a whodunit is the act that starts the narrative doesn't then return. You don't return to that act until the end of a narrative. That murder or whatever that kickstarts the story, you return to that at the end of the story. And I'm saying, well, if you think about things in that way, if you're a writer who's done a couple of those, then having a character start off your series in Doctor Who, then disappear until the end of the series, is narratively the same thing.
Yeah, it's possible.
So, I don't know, it's just other things.
The spy thing. I thought
the music as well, we should talk about the music.
The music was
terrible. Do you know what I've realised?
In the wrong. It didn't seem to suit some of the scenes. But when he went full pastiche and did some James Bondy stuff, it was wonderful.
Did you think so?
Yeah.
I thought the instrumentation was all wrong. I thought
when you got the ride cymbal.
Yeah, but it just sounded really thin and like a really badly done pastiche to me.
Okay, I've got a good telly.
That's true.
I'm not saying you've got a bad telly. I'm just saying
you were looking at some of the
No, I was wearing headphones, so I was getting the best out of the sound.
Okay.
Maybe that was why I was getting the best out of the sound.
That's not to say it didn't seem a little bit misplaced. I seem to remember a scene where there was quite a fairly basic conversation going on, and there was this big kind of menacing, moody music. Yeah,
like last
which
year.
would be the first. Yeah,
I thought the direction, for once, I saw odd decisions with the direction. So cuts between characters, that sort of jarred, that I thought was at the wrong time. So that it stood out to me, which it doesn't normally stand out to me. But at some point, I'm thinking, why is this scene kind of oddly paced? Why does it feel weird?
Sometimes that can just be because they don't have the coverage, and sometimes that's because they're filming abroad, and you've got to get through a certain amount of stuff. And there was a lot of foreign filming.
I think this is an interior thing.
Oh my God! What about the
OMG?
Oh my God!
Graphics.
Get it?
Yeah. No, the graphics.
Yeah.
As in Sheffield again.
Yeah, this is why Lee isn't here.
Yeah,
because he's probably still cross about seeing. They've written things on the screen. This is taking me out of the draw.
Oh no, he hates the fact that they were placing it within three-dimensional within the scene, didn't they? And put it on
The font they used was the one that they. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure
if it was.
I recognise the font. I'm not sure. It might have been the one that they used on there.
It's like a Futura or something. It's
on the Pertwee title sequence.
Oh, was it?
Or something like that.
It was
Or
pretty
from
bold.
the Target books or something.
Yeah.
I recognised it, and I'm sure it was a reference to something from the 70s.
Need to get on to Clayton Hickman.
Yeah.
The,
We should ask Twitter.
It
I'm
does
sure
look
it's been
good.
talked about on
It's like
Twitter.
a form of Futura or something.
I liked it. It's fun.
Futura is one of the Doctor Who. Is one of the Doctor, because again, Clayton Hickman,
The family of
has
Doctor Who fonts.
listed all the titles with the fonts.
Yeah.
Which I found strangely
I
fascinating.
think because it was so dominant on the screen, that was why it was a little bit jarring.
I quite liked it.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Okay.
I think it was that kind of it had that kind of Casino Royale.
It made my
sort of
sensibilities go on
Czech-
edge a bit. It was, but second watching, I got used to it.
Yeah,
I liked it.
I think it emphasised this kind of planet hopping.
Globe hopping.
Yeah. That you're here. Although Sheffield is a bit of an anticlimax.
There's somebody on Twitter. Oh, I wish I could remember the guy's name.
But it didn't
Is
come
this
up.
the one I saw where he added extra ones?
Extra ones in,
Yeah,
inside the Master's TARDIS and
Yeah,
stuff like that,
yeah.
which was really funny.
Sheffield.
Really funny.
Sheffield again. Still
Yeah.
Sheffield.
Yeah, that's the one.
More Sheffield.
Really good. Really good.
I think, well, we talked about in our little Series 12 preview where we didn't really know much of what was going on. Oh, and in the one where we talked about the trailer. So the two car chasers that we had in the trailer both turned up in this episode.
Yeah. Oh, and it wasn't, as it turned out, it wasn't the south of France with a vineyard. It was California. I'd forgotten that California makes grapes as well.
But so does
Which is
Australia
fair enough.
and lots of other places.
Yeah, but I just saw a vineyard and I think...
Okay, that's not the point I was going to make.
Sorry, okay.
So, you can deprecate all you like, but I wasn't here to pull you up on that. I was only going to say...
I was just making that.
I was only going to say both the car chasers we saw in the trailer have turned up in this episode. I'm wondering if after this big, bold, globe-hopping, car-chasing episode, the rest of Series 12 is going to go back to being very much like what Series 11 was.
They've whacked a load of money at
This story,
this.
yeah.
I'm not sure how expensive the car chasers would have been. One of
my
the car
point
chasers was over dirt roads. So
No, my point is, I wonder if the tone of the episodes is going to go back to something more like what we had before in the episodes between here and the finale. And if maybe this and the finale will be a bit bolder, a bit faster, a bit more globe hopping, and if the episodes in between will be more like things like The Witch Finders and Kablam and things like that.
I don't know. I think they'll probably deliver along the same lines, because if they are doing part 1, part 2, then there's a...
But once this is over, I wonder if the tone will revert
Oh, I see.
a bit more towards what Series 11 was like.
So I guess the question is whether this is setting a new style or a new approach for the series, or whether this is just consciously going for a big bang at the beginning.
New
and
Year's
then
Day
settling.
episode.
Yeah.
It could go either way. I sort of hope it's setting a new style.
Well, Resolution was like this. This is more. This is like Resolution
More dynamic.
cubed, really. More dynamic, yeah, more kinetic.
And it kind of
than
it's
Resolution was.
similar in structure to Resolution as well. It opens with him saying this story has a sense of scale, and he does this by just having 3 or 4 different settings, one after the other, which is a Moffat thing to do.
But he keeps it
Good
up
man
in
goes
this,
to war.
whereas in that it was just in the prologue, essentially. But then the other thing is the Resolution has the sort of self-contained, all essentially in and around one location, whereas this is going off and all over the place. And next episode back in time as well.
This is a demonstration of how versatile South Africa turns out to be as a location. That it can be California or Australia, even nowhere else.
Oh, I thought it did that really well. I tell you what, one of the things, our little Series 12 preview, completely out the window, because all over the internet, the spoiler sites that were putting up that stuff, a lot of that stuff's already been proven wrong. Like which episodes, which bits from the trailers were going to be in, but also which episodes have been written and directed by which people. So, for instance, all the spoiler sites all over the internet had episode 2 down as being a different director from episode 1.
Right.
But, people will know mostly when they're listening to this, but the second episode, according to BBC iPlayer, It's the same. Jamie Magnus Stone, director, as the first episode.
Okay.
So that throws out a lot of the other things that were on those sites as well.
And we're still expecting 1940s France.
Don't know.
We don't know.
Think so, because they turn up in 1940s France in their tuxes, don't they? And say this, we're in Paris in 1943. Oh, bugger. But there's nothing to stop them being in tuxes in another episode, so who knows?
Okay.
We can't be 100% sure now. Although I would imagine South Africa would have doubled quite effectively for 1943 Paris if it's doing all these other things as well.
Yeah.
It did 1950s America for Rosa, didn't it?
I think Cardiff or Gloucester would probably be a better place for 1940s
Don't know.
Paris. That kind of medieval streets.
Maybe, it's hard to say.
That and green screen. Big piece of green screen.
Right, we're going to give this one a big score.
Mm-hmm. I'll give it a score.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Well, go on then.
Okay, so this is the start of a series. I don't. Last year, I screwed the pooch. That's an expression. By giving a big score at the beginning, and I couldn't walk it down after that. So I'm 7 out of 10.
Okay. Do you want to read that out, Simon, and give you a score? Well, Exoskeleton agrees with Comedy Fish about the
time travel.
About the bit where you see what the companions have been up to in the year off screen. I think this is a thing that's for the general viewers and not for the fans, because I don't think the fans notice the year off, because the fans are thinking about the programme in the meantime. So for them, it's just a continuation from where Doctor Who left off. But for the general viewers, you've basically just had a year of no Doctor Who, where they've not thought about Doctor Who at all. And 12 months has passed after Resolution and before this. So I think this is more for the regular viewers than it is for the fans. Anyway, a score, Simon.
I'm going to give it a 9.
Okay.
Because I find it hard to fault in a lot of ways. It's not. It hasn't got. Whereas it's got some really nice sci-fi ideas, as you were discussing, which I think has been missing a little bit from the last series.
Makes you wonder how far into that this series might go. Yeah.
You know, I like the mind-bending stuff, the stuff where it goes in a direction I wasn't expecting, and you start thinking about it, and you go away from the episode thinking about it and experience the episode over the whole week between episodes.
This is what I like and what I always look for in a film, in a book, in a TV program, anything, is when you get to the end of your 20 minutes, your 60 minutes, your hour and a half or whatever, have you got to the end and have you been surprised in any way? And by surprise, I don't mean was there a twist that you didn't see coming, but did you get to the end of that episode and think, well, I've not seen that in any other episode?
No.
Or I've not read that in any other book.
Hence the Frog last year, you know?
Yeah. And this felt like it did that a bit, enough to justify it.
Yeah.
Because I think everything should always strive to do that, enough to justify its existence.
So, yeah, and most of that 9 goes to the new master, if I'm honest. And I'm just which was literally the last 6 minutes of the episode. I watched it on iPlayer earlier.
He was fantastic before that. Yeah. Everything he was doing before that to build up to that moment was just brilliant.
Yeah, see, there was a funny thing with that, because I didn't think anything was given away in the character to suggest that it was the master in disguise. I mean, we're talking about a character who, back in the 70s, you know, he put a dog collar on and all of a sudden he's a vicar, but we can all see it's the master. But there was nothing in personality to suggest. But then you think, if he's the same sort of intelligence as a doctor, he should be able to play anyone.
And also, we don't quite know yet what kind of a master he's going to be. We think he's going to be a reversion to sort of evil master after the sort of Missy redemption story. But if I'm right about the story about these microbes or whatever, it's possible the master could be enslaved and so is going through with this deception in order to try and free himself from this enslavement or something.
He did place a comedy bomb, which suggests a particular...
But we know the master, right from Terror of the Autons in his very first appearance, places comedy bombs and knows the doctor's going to get out of it. And my point being, we've had 6 minutes of him. So although it looks like he's reverted to being your typical evil master, we don't know yet.
But equally, I don't know whether it's ever been addressed or approached in this way in Big Finish or anything like that. But the idea that the master is supposedly a master of disguise, that was one of the big ideas, wasn't it, initially? Is that maybe it could be twisted in as much as it becomes split personalities, where he can literally flitch.
Yeah.
Flitch? Is that a word?
Switch
and flick. Yeah.
Swip
between characters to the extent where he literally becomes somebody else for that period of time. Which is
well, and
lovely
after
idea.
the Missy arc, why not?
Yeah.
Well, this was another thing that lots of people brought up. Could this be an earlier master from between, I don't know, Eric Roberts and John Sim? No, this is post-Missy on screen for 99% of the however many millions of people watching. This is after Missy. This is the master after
So he woke
Missy.
up in a dress.
And also, Sacha Dhawan's done a thing for the BBC that's on their YouTube channel that says outright he's the master that comes after Missy.
It's just something for Big Finish to do. That's all.
Andy Robinson says, offered Graham the chance to see the detailed files on the Doctor. If only he'd had the chance.
Maybe Graham did see some of it and that'll come up later.
Oh, it's possible.
Be good.
Maybe if not later in this story, later in the series or something. All sorts of possibilities. I was going to score it. I'm going to go between the two of you and give it an 8. Because this isn't quite as snappy as the Doctor Who that I really love. But this all depends on the resolution. If things go well next episode, this could be an excellent story. If things don't go well, this could just be a really bold, bright, brash, interesting, fun opener that doesn't really add up to much.
I'll give it my final score in a year's time. As normal.
My theory is, because a lot of people are saying these could be the Vord.
Or the Vardens.
Yeah.
The Vordens.
I was thinking Cybermen. Because
I think this little
shape.
I think
they do that fast thing, like that bullet time thing they do.
Army of Ghosts as well did Cybermen like this, so it's not entirely impossible.
I quite like the idea that they're just these beings of light, that they're not going to have a form. Because I find it quite creepy.
Well, like I say, there's a name in the end credits of the first episode where it says the voice actor gives a character name, whether that's the name of the species or the name of a particular individual from that species. It's hard to say, but given what the name is, it suggests it's not the Cybermen.
No.
And it would be unlikely to be the Ford, let's be honest.
Not likely. That would be... Yes.
Although the character name is Yarte.
Clutching 50-year-old straws.
Yeah, really. But you never know. But like I say, I'm convinced they're microbes. And now I'll be proven wrong, yeah? Okay, so we'll get together again, I think, Tuesday night.
Okay.
Are you free on Tuesday night, Simon? We're doing this
Should
live.
be.
Yeah.
9 o'clock, yeah.
So presumably, as long as we're all free, we'll do this again on Tuesday night. We won't be on video, but it does mean that the podcast of it, the audio podcast of it, will be out probably by midnight on Tuesday or very early on Wednesday morning. So that is when our review of Spyfall Part 2 will appear. Did you have something to add?
Tuesday night, I'm probably going to be celebrating my dad's birthday next month.
Okay, we'll do it on Wednesday then.
Okay.
Wednesday.
Okay.
This will all happen.
Yeah.
But until then, I was JR.
I was Matt.
I was Simon.
And we'll speak again then. And thanks to everybody who also watched on YouTube and joined us for this. I guess you can turn it off now, Matt. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Well, that was enthusiastic. Bye.
End stream. Yeah. End.